podcast. This is ABC DVD, Two Brothers' alphabetic journey through a DVD collection filled with the cacophony of sounds and shapes and colors. I'm Noah.
I'm Josh.
And today we are going to be delving into the classical Fantasia.
Oh, definitely classical music.
Definitely classical music.
Yeah.
This one we're going to be doing a little different because you really can't go through it scene by scene.
Go tell me who's starring in it and the directors.
Yes, we're also not going to do that because this is one of the few cinematic movies that has 0 credits. There is no opening credits. There is no ending credits.
So if they don't want to credit them, then neither are we.
The only words that ever appear on the screen are intermission.
And we're not going to have one of those.
No, we're not going to have one of those. But it was done in 1940.
Yep.
It is described as a collection of animated interpretations of great works of Western classical music, ranging from the abstract to the depictions of mythology and fantasy, and settings including prehistoric, supernatural, and the sacred.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I mean it's music video.
It's a music video. Yes,
it's music videos of classical music. Of us, like Disney wanted to have these images to the music of these classical pieces. There's a precursor to Fantasia, and he is also I think he worked on it briefly and was an influencer of Oscar Fleischinger of, I'm going to translate, of Study Number 5. In German it's Study Number 5.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the earliest examples of animation to music, and what those were. And you would recognize it as like a Fantasia thing, and it's just these it's just these white lines on a black background to classical music.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like an experimental animation before Disney. But he's like, oh no, that's a good idea. Why don't we do that as our next feature film? And this is the third. Oddly, I thought it was much later, but this is the third Disney feature film out of all the Pantheon. I mean, this is after Cinderella and Snow White, and then this. And that's the thing.
Well, and I mean, it is definitely experimental. I can appreciate what they're doing. It's like, listen, let's bring the orchestra to the masses. Let's really flex our muscles and show off how we can make an artsy film.
Yeah. I mean, this is just like, we can bring class. You should kind of show like animation doesn't just have to be kids' films. It could be classy.
Yeah. Academic.
You can have that thing of you're going to the orchestra, but you're also going to see images.
Right. Now, in terms of a business venture, this was considered a flop.
Yeah.
Not 100% Disney's fault,
Yes.
because he couldn't show it in most of the world because
why?
Oh, I don't know. There was a world war starting. So
which one was it? The good one or the? No.
It was World War II, Electric Boogaloo.
Oh yes, yeah.
So yeah, Europe and Asia were kind of out of the market. So this really just played in North America. But
Yeah.
in the long run of re-releases in the 60s and the 80s and the 90s, it has made its money back.
I quite enjoyed it. Did very well in the 60s when people realized, hey, if we drop some acid or some mushrooms and watch this, it's really fun to watch. So they leaned hard into that psychedelic thing of, yeah, let's just do it. Let's make money off these hippies.
So
yeah.
But as I said, there is no title sequence. It literally goes into the orchestra warming up. It is the Philadelphia Orchestra.
Well, the music is from the Philadelphia Orchestra. The actual people we see, not them.
Oh,
I know. These are
they brought in scabs.
No, they brought in scabs. These are just people to look like they're part of the orchestra. I mean, some of them seem like they know what they're doing when they're playing, but it's not actually the Philadelphia Orchestra.
I'm a little sad by this.
I am too.
The only person we really see talking throughout this, minus a Mickey Mouse interlude, is Deems Taylor. He is the narrator, and he basically says that, we're going to be delving into like 3 areas of music. Ones that tell a story, ones that paint pictures, and ones that the music just exists.
Yeah, it's like it was like you could tell like the writer's room of how do we actually make a movie out of this? Of okay, we could take the music and make a story out of it. And they said, well, that's fine, but we don't want to do that for all. That was like, okay, well, we could do some things that might be stories, but that's just up to the viewer's interpretation. And then there's like, hey, we're just going to do abstract images, kind of what your brain would do if it was listening to music and you were tired.
Yep.
And then, they said, we're going to start with the third one, with the abstract.
Well, and I do find it interesting that Disney, who is a big micromanager of his company, basically gave his animators 0 kind of oversight. Like, no, you choose the colors, you choose the patterns, let your mind wander. And that was a first and really only time that he ever allowed them to kind of go off
carte blanche. Yeah.
Which I guess makes sense in this. Like, listen, I can't tell you what the music means to you.
Yeah.
But we can totally tell the audience what the music means to us.
Exactly, yeah.
So our first song is Toka and Fugue by Bach. It's probably
in D minor, by the way.
In D minor. It is probably the most abstract of all the songs. You know, very... You start with a lot of just looking at the symphony.
Well, yeah, so it's like that, what they described it as, you're watching the symphony and then your mind's going to wander. So you get the symphony and then the silhouettes of the symphony, and then they kind of merge into just colors and shapes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is like, the first half is more grounded in reality. The second half is just shapes.
And as a starting point for their experiment, I don't think this is a bad idea.
No.
So to say we're going to probably kind of throw you in the deep end of, we're not going to give you a narrative. We're just going to say, just enjoy the music. And the images are going to just be a thing for your eyes and brain to kind of play off of.
And what it reminded me of was Salvador Dali earlier was trying to do avant-garde filming.
Yeah.
Where it's like, there is no story. The images aren't supposed to make sense to each other. And it's like this, at least in the second half, really delves into an avant-garde style.
Which is funny because Salvador Dali actually pitched some
he did
some stuff for this Fantasia. It never made it, but if you watch Fantasia 2000, you actually do see some of the artwork he submitted to be ideas for this run.
I like it that Disney's like, no, that's too weird.
Yeah, that's going too far, Salvador.
Which, it's
Salvador
Dali.
It's Dali.
It's Dali. I don't really have much more to say about this. It's an intro.
It's an intro. I mean, it's shapes and sounds. I mean, and I just wanted like the idea of this is probably a good way to start it. I mean,
yeah, no, it definitely. I really do feel like there's going to be a kid in the audience watching. It's like, what did you bring me to? Yeah. What did you bring me to, Mom and Dad?
Yeah. And so yeah, it transitions right into the second one, which is Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker Suite. And as they say, it's the second kind where it's not really a story, but your brain can kind of, they're playing some kind of thing to it.
Well, and this,
it's flowers in spring.
This is also Disney kind of showing off a little bit because this is one of 3 that he's using live dancers.
Yes, to rotoscope. Yeah,
to rotoscope, and so like the fairies are
actual people.
Actual
the flowers
dancers.
of people's there's actually ballerinas and it's the lessons they learned from Snow White and Cinderella, that if we actually rotoscope an actual dancer, we can get better movement and more realism out of it.
Yes, but you mentioned the mushrooms.
Yes.
I have 2 things about the mushrooms. This is one of at least a few examples of this is Disney's racism kind of coming through, is they are stereotypically Chinese. They have little ponytails.
They have ponytails. They have the slanted eyes
and the little the what would be the rice patty hats as their mushroom caps.
And now, the problem? And we'll talk about this later. But it's like, do you think it's malicious or is it a product of its time, kind of thing? And that's a hard thing to.
It's a hard thing because it's like because Disney does have a track record of throwing racist imagery, which I'm sure was very prevalent at the time. Yeah, it's hard to say. Is it malicious or are they just pandering to the audience?
Yeah. One of the things, just a fun Easter egg of the movements of the mushrooms. One of them does this kind of crossover leg dance, and that was inspired by the Three Stooges.
Yeah. No, and it's like, no, I mean, they are definitely pulling from pop culture.
Yeah.
I do like at the very end, because this is associated with Russia. Yeah. That the flowers and the, I guess,
the weeds, the thistle weeds,
they are
doing the actual
very Russian looking with like the big bear hats and the kind of legs, the little dances.
And I also like seeing, just for a history of Disney, that like before that was the fish segment. And he's like, oh, I could see like when they were doing a lot of these things of, oh, this was Little Mermaid, but they went, hey, we could do this. We can do underwater scenes. We can make it work. No,
and you definitely tell like this spawned off into a whole
because like the fairies was like, this is pre-Tinkerbell, but the magic they use is the exact same kind that Tinkerbell will use, and it's like, oh, you can see the groundworks of future Disney films.
And other movies, which I will get to in other.
So that's basically all I had to say. I mean, it is the 4 seasons. Every fairy is like spring, summer, winter. I mean, it's
there's imagery there.
It's imagery there. It's
it's on the nose.
It's on the nose.
We're up to the third one, which is probably the most recognizable.
Yeah.
not only in, I'd say, Disney history, but in this film.
Definitely this film, yeah.
And that's The Sorcerer's Apprentice. This is where you first get Mickey and his kind of, I'd say, modern day.
Yeah, so before this, you got what was the Steamboat Willie Mickey,
Yes.
which was it didn't have pupils, more, up and down movement, kind of more raggedy. And they said, no, with color and all this, we want him to have a new image. So they designed Mickey for this movie. But because this movie took years to make, there were like 2 or 3 shorts where that Mickey was introduced. But this is the first time it was designed, and it was his first feature
film debut,
definitely in that new style.
I do find it interesting that the first time they pitched this, they wanted to use Dopey from the Seven Dwarfs because it's like that was already an established character.
Yeah.
Like, well, the audience will know, oh, he's Dopey.
He's wrong. But
Disney pushback's like, no, I want Mickey.
I want my
mouse.
I want my guy.
This one is definitely
The Sorcerer's Apprentice by Paul Dugas.
Is like everyone I think now associates this song with this.
Oh yeah,
it's very much like how the Lone Ranger song
it's just no longer William Tell's Overture. It's the Lone Ranger
song. It's like this is like no. You see the broomsticks when you hear it.
Yeah.
One thing I do find interesting is that that low kind of do 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 do.
Yeah.
That instrument is actually here in Colorado.
Oh, really?
The actual original instrument that played that is here in Colorado.
As we said, if there's anything with Colorado, we like
are
to put
going
it
to shoehorn it in there.
Yeah, but the sorcerer himself is based off of Walt Disney, kind of tongue-in-cheek by the animators. They said it's like, oh, we're going to make this old man our boss. And they kind of lovingly called him Yen Sid, which is Disney backwards.
Yeah.
And they said that's like, we thought we were, the game was up when we had him like raise his eyebrow because Disney would always look at us like that.
Like, so, what are you people doing?
Yeah. You should be working.
I mean, as most of the things though, this one is probably the more enjoyable one. It's probably the one that sticks with people longer.
Well, I mean,
because it tells a whole story.
I mean, is their first example of what they said was the first one of a narrative story of the very, 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 very old story of the Sorcerer's Apprentice and kind of the Gollum like idea of if you use magic to do servitude, you better be very specific about your instructions or it's going to bite you in the butt.
Yep. But I do think it interesting. Like, we're talking, 80 years later.
Yeah.
Is the Sorcerer Mickey is still used in the iconography of Disney. Like whenever they need Mickey to be a magician,
he has this hat.
This one. It's that hat. It's like. Yeah. And it's like even though the broomsticks don't really make that many more appearances going forward, is like they still like to harken back to it.
No, it's always there.
So.
It is a Disney touchstone.
Yes.
And then we'll just go continue.
Song number 4,
Igor Stravinsky's Rite of Spring.
This one is interesting because Igor Stravinsky is the only living composer that was still alive when this came out, and he actually came to Disney and said, "Hey, I will write you a whole new piece of music if you want." They're like, no, we want this one. And he goes, oh, well, do you want me to do it? And they're like, no, we just want the rights.
Yeah.
And he was actually really upset when he saw the movie because
they kind of cut it up.
They chopped it up, and he goes, that's not
my music.
You butchered it. So he was really upset about it, which I can understand.
Yeah, and I think it was like a chance meeting too, like that Disney saw him at a
restaurant.
It's like I would love to, I have this idea. I would love to do it. It's like he's like, yeah, that sounds like a really fun idea. A good way to get the masses to appreciate classical music. And then he was saddened because his music was kind of butchered in his eyes.
You can definitely see like an artist be like, no, if you're gonna put my music in, could you put all of it in, not just piecemeal? But
this is one of the ones of the science of evolution and dinosaurs and the origin of life.
What is interesting is like you are getting the science of the time because my eyebrows raised up because they used common words because they said there was a dust bowl that killed out the dinosaurs. And they specifically used the word dust bowl because the average person lived through the Depression and knew, oh, I know what a dust bowl is.
Yeah, that's what happened to us and it was awful.
Well, and I had to look up like when did the asteroid become a theory, and that wasn't the earliest records of it being published is 1953,
so
and it really
didn't
get harder evidence until the 1980s. So like, yes, we've grown up thinking,
the asteroid killed everyone.
You get the 1940s, like, no, there must have been a giant.
It was climate change.
It was climate. No,
that's not real.
But we do get some live action things
Yeah,
here of the mud,
Mhm.
coming out of the volcano.
Yeah, as the lava was mud and oatmeal that they rotoscoped and filmed and things like that. Also, interestingly, this is one of the few examples of Disney not anthropomorphizing animals. So, like, all the dinosaurs are kind of drawn as best they can realistically,
right?
Not with those big eyes and expressive faces. Right. They wanted this to actually be kind of scientific as best they could
at the time. I mean, the Stegosaurus and the T-Rex are wrong, but that's okay.
Well, and since we want to talk about things, Stegosaurus, that's the dinosaur of Colorado.
That is our state dinosaur, so we know if it's wrong.
And because I just want to put in a stupid fun fact that the Stegosaurus fights off the T-Rex. Mm-hmm. You know what that's called?
What?
The spikes on the dinosaur's tail, the 4 spikes on the tail.
Yeah,
it's called a thogomizer. That comes from the Far Side comic books. Because Gary Larson of Far Side just as a joke said, "Oh, this is called the thogomizer after our late friend Thog, who got killed by a Stegosaurus." A paleontologist read that comic and looked up. It's like, you know what? We've never named these spikes. I'm gonna name it that. And it's like, you know what? I can't see it without thinking and giggling. So I thought, let's share that with the audience here.
You now have a cocktail fact to throw around, folks.
Do you know what the thogomizer is?
Well, and it's like another thing is Spielberg said that this movie was one of his favorite animated
films as a child. Yeah,
I can't.
Yeah,
and I would say that if you push came to shove, can't see this scene and think, did you have the Land Before Time?
Yeah,
ideas with this in mind, because it's like you look, it's like. This is Land Before Time.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
all
beat
the
for
dinosaurs and
beats
trying to find water and parents dying.
The land upheaval. It's like God. It's Land Before Time.
I figure I could start a movie series that will keep going forever. But then we get intermission. So let's go to the lobby. Get ourselves some snacks.
Yeah. Well, it's like it is kind of an intermission. It's like, but with like a jazz.
Yeah, so they kind of play off
soundtrack.
But eventually, it would the title would come on. But for the DVD and the Disney Plus audience, they just cut it out because it's only 2 hours. We don't need an intermission. We've had Lord of the Rings and
we do get like a let's take a moment to talk about the science of the soundtrack.
Yeah, and it's a kind of uncredited song in the movie of just everyone's messing around. Well, it's like the jazz interlude.
The jazz interlude. Let's show how sound waves work.
Yeah.
I don't particularly care for it.
You can see it's part of the experience that they were trying to go for, and thinking that this is what kids and adults might want.
Right. But we go into song number 5, the Pastoral Symphony. This one I'm going to talk about a little bit more than others.
Yeah, Symphony number 6.
But because there's a lot of
by Beethoven.
Yes.
Well,
I guess
we should credit at least them.
Beethoven, I guess you get some credit.
He's not going to listen to our podcast.
He never would listen
because he's deaf.
Oh,
I'm dead.
But there's a lot of Greek imagery, so we can delve into your Greeky knowledge.
Yeah, I get to talk about one of my biggest pet peeves.
A whole flock of pegapods?
No, that's not it.
But there is a whole flock of pegapods.
And that is a problem. My problem was before even the sequence starts, it's the introduction where he says, "Oh, and then there's the Bacchanalia with Zeus." It's like it's Dionysus and Zeus, or it's Bacchanalia, Bacchus and Jupiter. Pick Greek or Roman. Do not mix it. It pisses me off.
You heard it here, folks. Do not mix your Greek and Roman.
Yeah, I mean, just choose one. I mean, Hercules is like the only one I accept to be in both. I mean, it's Heracles and Hercules, but that's fine.
Yeah.
But it irks me. It's like, just choose one and stick with it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it is all the Greek mythology.
But we do start with flying horses, which this was an actual conversation we had a while ago. Because I was like, well, what is a grouping of Pegasuses called? You're like, there's only one Pegasus. I'm like, no, look, there's a whole bunch of it. It's like a bunch of Pegapussies. It's like, no, they're Pegapods. It's like, is it like octopus? And you're like, no, there's only one Pegasus. The rest are just flying horses.
They're just flying horses. It's the name of that one, But yeah.
So we get a lot of frolicking, and then we get the centaurs.
And boom!
I was gonna say, well, they're clear. Well, naked. Corny fingers. I mean, they do cover themselves. I'm like, do centaurs not have nipples?
I know.
No one has nipples.
So it was like a deleted thing where it was a little bit more graphic, and then they toned it down. And it's like, okay, so they don't have it, and then they started covering it up. It's like, oh, they do have it.
But even the guys don't have nipples, and I'm like, Well, is it like the horses, like their nipples are underneath the cloak?
I mean, this has been a question for a lot of people of like, you know how when horses give birth and the fawn like basically starts walking,
Yeah.
but with babies it takes months. Do you think like a centaur, like that bottom half's walking, but the top half's just like flopping around, just like a baby just flopping around? And how do they wear pants? These are the questions we want.
These are the questions you should have.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this.
There's a scene that
you probably didn't see.
Well, if you're watching the Disney Plus version, and I think a lot of the DVD ones,
all the DVD, I think this has been erased from history.
This is one of those examples
you can find it on YouTube
of Disney erasing it. It did it once before with Song of the South, which
that is gone.
I'm sure most people have no idea. The only real way you would know it is because you did Splash Mountain.
I wanted to know where that thing came from.
And all the Brer Fox and Brer Rabbits.
Yeah,
but there are a few examples in Disney history where they considered it so racist that they basically took it out of public consumption.
Yeah, and I'll talk about both sides of the argument, and I get both sides. For the Disney Plus version, they had this little warning saying, hey, these things were done in a different time and might be culturally insensitive. And we just want you to know that before going into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, they're going to include this character, Sunflower, the donkey black centaur.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a very racist stereotype of
I mean, it's a lot of the way that
the curly hair, black faced.
It's how the mammies were drawn in the Deep South. Big lips, wide eyes, and I mean, it is
and in servitude
racist
to the others. Yeah,
and she is serving all the white centaurs.
Beautiful centaurs.
I mean, it is unabashedly racist. Not even like it's like, oh well, this like no, it is just racist. But
it wasn't included in the Disney Plus, even with that warning.
No, even with that warning, they have just cut it out.
They zoomed away. They have painted her out in some scenes. It is gone.
Yes.
And so here's the two arguments for it. There's another animation studio of Warner Brothers had the same issue, but what they've done is they put that warning on and they've left it in.
Mm-hmm.
And they've had like Whoopi Goldberg and Sidney Poitier and other prominent black actors say, hey, this wasn't cool, but this is our history, and to ignore it is wrong. So there's that side of the argument that you should not whitewash your history.
Yeah.
But then there's another one that I heard like from the Scrubs podcast of saying, hey, I don't actually want to hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
And this is hurting people, and I have the ability to remove it.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't I? And that's their argument of is like, this was wrong. And we know it's wrong. And it's not essential to this story. We can remove it. Why don't we?
Yeah.
And so that's their view on Sunflower.
And I mean, and that is a whole college course on is it right? Is it wrong? Should you keep it? Should you not?
Yeah.
We just want to make mention that there is this scene.
Yeah.
And it is hard to, I mean, you do get a little hint of it later with Bacchus coming out, and he's flanked by two zebra centaurs that are clearly a caricature of Africans at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't take that out, but this other one,
was too much.
If you go Google it, it is difficult to see.
Yeah, you watch YouTube, it'll show you the pre-removal and post-removal to show what they did, and it's like, oh wow, that I thought I heard that was bad, but then you see it's like, oh, it is
bad. And so, but you will have to make your own decision of where you fall on
what is appropriate. I kind of the film historian in me is like, yes, have this be the version with Sunflower. Do not make it impossible to find.
Right. Keep a record because it's still history.
And same thing with Song of the South. It's like, you should not ignore what was actually released, what was accepted.
Well,
as a marker of what audience thought was okay back then.
Well, yeah, and it's like I think there is a problem when you make Disney the person and the company, infallible. Like, no, we've always been above board. It's like no, because we've all watched Dumbo with the Jim Crows.
Yes,
we watched Lady and the Trap with the Siamese. It's
cats.
Like, we do know you have this. It's like it is important to see like. As a company, you were of the time, and that doesn't age well sometimes.
And it doesn't age well, but it helps as a marker for people looking back of this was what was seen when people say, where we have people today saying, oh, you social justice warriors, it never was that bad. When we take away these pieces of evidence, they can have their argument. It's that denial. It's like, no, we need to show that this is what people had scene and thought either was A-okay or they just had to put up and be silent about it.
Mhm.
You know? So
This-
we've touched on it.
Let's touch on it. That is our diatribe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it just continues. Apollo right into the sunset. You
Yep.
know, Zeus
Zeus being a jerk.
Continuing on to our seventh or
Sixth.
sixth or seventh, depending if you count the jam sequence.
Oh, I counted as 6
The sixth. So, Dance
of the Hours.
of the Hours by America Pinucci or
Mhm.
Pancelli. Yeah, I'm mispronouncing it on purpose.
Or this one I don't have a lot besides saying it made me chuckle.
Yeah, I mean it's the animals doing ballet.
Yeah.
This has been made fun of you know, all these different animals, the ostriches, the hippos, the elephants, the alligators.
Yeah.
And they try to make it as realistic as possible. They brought in a 200-pound woman dancer as references for the hippopotamus to say how would the body actually, you know, withhold, you know, this weight and in movement. Fun little Easter egg. Each of the set of animals does have a name for the animators. Nothing bad. The ostriches was named Millie. The hippo was called Hyacinthe. The elephants were Upanova. The alligators, this is where they were having fun, was Ben Alligator. Ben Ollie, Ben Alligator. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, we're so clever.
I mean, it just is.
It's cute. It's a cute one.
It's again.
You got to throw a lighthearted one.
There's kids in the audience. You have to entertain them.
Well, and in true pre-90s fashion, you give them something heartwarming so you can then scare the heck out of them later. And that's song number 7. Yeah. Actually, my favorite song.
Yeah, the finale.
The Night on Bald Mountain.
Bald Mountain / Ave Maria with let's see, the one's by Musio and the other's by Schubert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm probably
no, Schubert's right.
No, Schubert's right. The other one. It's like this is more of I didn't write it properly, so not bad. But
this one is the one I actually remember the most, and it probably is a lot of them because they said 80 years later they still get letters from parents saying that was too scary.
Yeah, and I remember there was some like for when Fantasia 2000 was coming out, it's like, oh, there seems to be some demonic symbolism with this bird. And it's like, come on, the first one had the actual devil in it.
Well, and the devil is actually Bela Lugosi.
Yeah, he
was served as a model, and I was looking like, you know, that does look like Bela Lugosi moving around.
I mean, I've heard conflicting things that like he posed for some of the devils and the demons, and then but then he was like too flamboyant, so then they actually used other people. But it's like it's kind of lost the time that some were Bela Lugosi and some were just, you know, stage hands and other things. So,
but I mean, this one, I mean, it has imagery.
Yes.
It definitely has imagery.
Well, and what's interesting about this one is it was one of the most complex sequences for the entire film. The last sequence with the Ave Maria is a single shot using glass plates that they transition through one to the other in this giant soundstage.
Yes.
And they only did 3 takes. And not because they thought they just had it on the third take. The first take, they used the wrong lens, and you could see like the crew members behind it. The second take, there was an earthquake halfway through it.
Cracked.
And not that the glass cracked, but they weren't 100% sure that everything was kind of stable.
Yeah.
The third take was the final take because the film was premiering that day.
Yeah, they got it hours.
But they got it to New York's premiere 4 hours before it happened. That sequence almost didn't make it.
I mean, and it is pretty.
Oh, I mean, it's very beautiful. And they said it was very challenging, especially the second half, because they wanted this stained glass feel and that the background should be the focus, not the people. And they said that's very hard for animators, whereas the backgrounds are usually stable and the people are moving. They had to reverse it, and it was very hard for them.
But I mean, like I said, this was Disney's way of kind of experimenting and pushing the limits of the medium at the time.
Yep. And then it just ends. And there's no as I said, there's no closed credits, there's no reels. It's just like, no, you came to see a concert and the concert's over. Yeah. You know, and that's our review. I mean, and it's, you know, I mean, and, you know, it's Gandhi, Noah. The next movie's Gandhi. I didn't know if you want to do your review, but the next...
I was like, crap, we've made it to the end, and there's nothing. Literally, there's no credits, and there's no segue into the next movie.
Okay.
It's Gandhi. Jeez. I'm sorry.
I was like, can I hint? He was like, as a bowl of candy. No.
As I pull my notes up frantically.
It's like I can yes and only so much here, but our next movie will be Gandhi.
So going from the longest animated Disney to one of the longest movies ever made.
Yeah, but I still think Fantasia is worthwhile having as a experiment, and I also like the idea of him thinking that it would be updated constantly. It's only been updated once, but who knows? In another
20,
60,
30
well,
years.
let's say it was 60 years from the first one, so we'll got another 40 years for the third one.
And we might be around for Fantasia 3.
Yeah,
Disney's revenge.
Yes, but I wouldn't like say it's necessary, but it's like, hey, if you put it on and wanted to see a piece of history,
it's history. It's like it definitely got put on in elementary school when they had nothing for us to do.
The substitute teacher day kind of thing.
I would be interested to know if my children have to watch Fantasia 2000 when they've run out of things for them to do.
Yeah, I think there's just a glut of animation now that they don't have to.
That's true. But yeah, I mean, go out, maybe watch it piecemeal, because watching in one setting, I definitely was.
It gets tiresome.
Sleepy.
I mean, you have to be in the mood for classical music, and then it's like you have to be in the mood for a concert.
Yep.
And if you're not, it's like, hey, watch one segment and stop, because it's not like you're going to interrupt the flow.
That's true.
Yeah. So.
Yep.
All right. Thanks for listening. Come join us next time for Gandhi. And yeah. Bye.
The Leopold Stokowski.
Yeah.
Flamboyant, laterally white man, U.S. conductor.
There's a dating profile.
Wow, that is
dating profile.
You are flamboyantly white man.
We found him, the flamboyantly white man.
12 directors.
What?
12 directors.
And a partridge.
Are there 12 directors, but only like 7 scenes? Doesn't even say like what their scenes are. Jesus Christ, 24 writers. 2 writers for every director.